Lance, I can count on now, even with talking to you, both hands, the number of people with room to spare, even talking to you that I've told this whole thing to. Because this is just wilderness. And these trees, I'm not used to that dense of timber. If this is an animal, I'm going to sneak up on it because I want to see what this is. Now I've got my rifle at a little higher port because I'm like, okay, I'm getting really close and this is getting even weirder. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? I mean, it was so explosive. When I looked up, this thing was standing. And this is the worst part was, every fiber of my being said just.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Monster 911. Lance here. So before we get into this next show here, which we will jump right into, but I just want to ask a question for you guys, is what would you like to see on the Monster 911 show that's not being done? Throw it out there. I'm all ears for you guys. So let's jump right into the show here. It's one of those interviews that just kind of sticks in your mind for a while because it has some very pattern features that we see. The interviews that I've done over the years since 2017, I've noticed that the most terrifying, if you will, encounters and most profound, if you will, in the sense of the proximity, has occurred with hunters. Solo hunters or hunters that are in pairs. When you're out in remote locations like most hunters are, you know the lay of the land. Every hunter is different in skill set. The emotional aspect still is a part that is really profound, even with people with exceptional skill set in the outdoors. When you encounter something for the first time that you didn't know existed, it shakes your world. You realize for the first time what else is out there that I'm not aware of. I just want you to really listen to the demeanor, how he says what he says, and his training, and what kicked in, and all the components of this, because it really is important. When you listen to each and every encounter, you learn a little bit more. I just wanted to give this intro to let you know that it's very critical to emotionally and mentally prepare yourself when you go into the field because of the possibility of what you might encounter. But also you have to physically prepare yourself aerobically for challenges out there. If you're out in remote areas and something happens, and even if you have a buddy, you're gonna have to call upon your body to do what you need to do. Give me some comments what you thought about the show, and give me some comments on where you'd like to see the channel, on where you would like to see the channel grow or do, or new areas. I'm open ears, trust me, and I've got some things coming, but I really want to know what your comments are first. So enjoy the show, guys, and then we'll have a summary and we'll talk a little bit about what you heard.
Well, I guess I better give you a background on myself just real quick. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, but where my parents were getting their graduate degrees, and then we promptly moved when I was 2 years old to rural Oregon, town of 300. Middle of the mountains. So that was my childhood. Hunting. We hunted for all of our meat. We fished for all of our fish. There wasn't grocery stores. My dad just had a job with the government. So we were there till I was 10. So all that time in the wilderness, there was no population centers nearby. Then we moved to the big town in Idaho of 1,000 people and then got property out of that town on the river where my parents still are. And that borders the largest national forest is there in Idaho, in the largest, least populous county in Idaho, bordered by the second largest wilderness in the country, the Frank Church. So that was my playground too, growing up.
Wow.
That's where I, from 10 till I graduated. But then I would come back in the summers while I was getting my degree in the medical field. Um, I would go back and work for the Forest Service on a road crew. So we maintained those wilderness roads. So I was often the first person back to cut those roads open with a chainsaw.
Okay.
And then when needed, I was a wildland firefighter. All of us were if we went to fire school. So every summer for 4 summers, I actually spent a lot of time on fires. And then my 5th year, my degree, it wasn't a master's, but it was an extended clinical program. So it was 5 to complete. My 5th year, when I came back, I just did some logging and building log homes in Stanley, Idaho, in the central Idaho. Had a gap till about my early 30s where I didn't hunt much. I still, once my son was born, I was 26. When he was 2, we started the every summer camping tradition. Just tried to keep that going. Not much hunting until back in my 30s. And then my dad and I would go out or have been up until the last couple of years. We spend 2 weeks, usually in the Frank Church wilderness. So we set up a base camp. That's it. And then we go out from there and we're out there for 2 weeks straight.
Okay.
Lately, I've been doing jumps into North Idaho because I live right across the border in Washington now. So it's just a quicker jump for me to get into the Panhandle. And so that was 2021, another elk hunt planned, but up in the Panhandle in the St. Joe National Forest. I had never been there. Turns out the very area we were on, my dad had been on that major fire. Did wildland fire too in 2008, so he knew it. So he got up there the Wednesday prior to opening day of the season. I was finishing up that week of work. I had started a new job in another clinic, and so I had got up there that Saturday. The following Monday was opening day, so we got there a little bit early. I just remember the first thing we met in, I guess you can call it a town, the population's 9 at the foot of these mountains. And I got out of my truck and he got out of his, and I just looked up, and it's just that brutal, steep terrain, heavy, dense forest. And I looked at him. I didn't have to say anything. And he goes, "Yep." And I'm like, "We're in for a bad one, aren't we?"
Wow.
So we made our way up. It was a 2-hour climb in our pickup trucks up all these old logging Forest Service roads to finally, we were just looking for a place to set up base camp. And it was so steep, you just couldn't find flat areas. But finally, we hit the terminal point of one road, a spur road out on a ridge, way up on a ridge that had a flat base camp area. So we stationed there, and that was great because the road terminated 50 yards down from camp. So we knew no one's coming that way to bug us.
Right.
So we set up our wall tent that we usually use, got our trucks positioned. What was funny is the day before, Sunday, opening season, there were people driving around, families with their kids. It's a small town, Idaho. That's recreation too. That's why I love it going back, because everybody's armed to the teeth, but everybody's your best friend unless you do something stupid. And
Right.
that's how I grew up. But what was interesting is my dad and I commented on this together, and we encountered these people separately. People that were familiar with the area asked us, "Hey, is that your camp back there?" We're like, "Yeah." And between my dad and I, no less than 5 separate people had said to us, "Well, you got the place to yourself. No one hunts this side of the mountain." Okay, we were like, awesome, because we don't want people. That's why we go into the Frank Church. You go out there and there may as well be no such thing as humanity if you just go a little ways out off the terminal point of those stem roads. So we thought it was great.
Yeah.
So set up camp, freezing, awful cold night. The temps were already dropping. This was October, early October. We're already dropping in the teens at night. So we started up, had a couple days of hunting. The first day was horrendous. It was sleet that started at 6 a.m. and turned into snow sprinkles at 6 o'clock at night. So not even the animals were dumb enough to come out, but I had my gear on. I was fully camoed like you saw in that picture, face camo, my gun's camo. And I beat feet all up and down that mountain all day, just dumping water out of my rifle barrel. But I just loved it. And you couldn't hide from that weather. It was coming up at you, up the slope. You went under a tree, it drained down your back. You stepped out in the wind, it hit you in the face. So luckily I invested in good gear. And so I just paced up and down the mountain. And at the terminal part of the road was this massive, I guess, granite slide that just in the fog or the mist or whatever, the sleet, looked like the end of the world, because it starts at the top of the ridge and is just an endless barrier all the way down. And I couldn't even see across it. And some of these slabs were the size of small cars. So when I hit that and it came out of the gloom, I was like, this is what, the end of the world looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving a little bit more quickly into the day it happened. So that day, October 11th, bright, sunny, beautiful day. The high that day was 35, but it was clear, blue. It's bluest sky. I mean, our camp was at 7,500 foot, so it was just beautiful. So my dad and I don't hunt together. We don't, stand hunt or anything like that. We go out and stalk. We look for spoor. We track. We follow. We, do that thing. So we just always go, okay, I'm going east, you're going west, whatever. Something happens, fire off 3 shots. We had little walkie-talkies, but limited range.
Gotcha.
So I went west on the spine of the ridge. He went east. I found out very quickly by about 10 o'clock in the morning, it hit a literal rock wall. It was just a sheer drop off on all these sides. So I wandered back, and it was about noon. Went by base camp, just grabbed some food. And then I'm like, okay, I haven't gone just kind of due south and east of camp. I know my dad's following due east, so I'm going to go south and just plunge off. It's noon, I'll wander around for a couple hours, and, the sun's dipping early that time of year, that high up.
Sure.
So I start just meandering my way down the slope. No, I hadn't even seen a game trail in 3 days. There's no trails because this is just wilderness. And these trees, I'm not used to that dense of timber. In the Frank Church and where I grew up, you get into timber, but it's a little bit more sparse and spread out. This was just, I'm like, I'm going to punch an elk before I have to shoot it at this point. And I'm just wandering, I'm being quiet, it's really a lot of underbrush too. So I'm stalking, just a lot of stop and listen and waiting. And then about 1 o'clock, I come across the first game trail I've seen, and it looked like it had fresh track and movement on it. So I'm like, heck yeah. And it was heading east, but a little north. And I'm like, well, that's where the road is. So eventually I got to get back up this mountain. I'm not going to keep going down and then be humping it up this hill with grizzly bear, or a grizzly black bear, wolf, cougar, that they're all up there. Their sign and everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking I'll start following it. So I start going up slope away, but I had turned and looked, and I could see open area just down the slope, like this column of open trees that went into grassy little steps. And I thought, well, hey, wait a second. This is the first opening I've seen with grass. And I'm thinking, if I was an elk, I would be down there, because it went down in like 3 steps and then a larger clearing that was probably 200 to 250 yards down. But I could see actually that far down the slope. It was the first opening.
Nice.
But then I looked at my watch and I said, okay, 1 o'clock. if I keep following going down there, it's going to be a rough, just straight up. This slope was just steep. So I'll come back tomorrow. And I turn and start walking up the slope. Then from exactly down towards that lower clearing area, I hear 5 rhythmic, that I describe the sound as thok, THOK, like a comic book, the exaggerated sound, because it's a deep, meaty wood sound, but evenly spaced, thok, thok. And I'm like, what the heck? And I turned to look, and I could tell directionally it was down those grassy steps and into that lower area. And I'm like, I thought to myself, what would someone be beating on a tree down there? There's no, and then I just kind of laughed that off. I'm like, it snowed the days before. We're up at the terminal part. This is just awful, awful terrain and weather. There's no one down here but us. And then I thought, okay, but you know what? I don't have the time for this. I don't know. Maybe it was, who knows? I'm leaving. So I turn to go again, and then 2, thok, thok. And now I'm like, okay, well, this is a little weird. Plus, I'm like, let me check out this lower grassy area for elk sign. I'll go down a little bit. And that was kind of weird. If I hear it again, I'm bored. I haven't seen any game in 3 days except for a couple mule deer I wasn't hunting for. And so I go down and I start seeing elk sign in the first step in this. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So I start stalking quietly, toe to heel, because it's brittle snow and then grass. Okay. And I see elk scat. I see some prints, and I'm like, some of these could have happened within the last 24 hours. Okay, now I'm excited. And so I'm just watching those. I forgot about the sound. And then thok. And I'm like, that's the same area, the same direction. Okay. And I'm like, all right, now this is kind of weird. I'm going, okay, there are not people down here. The road that even access this ridge goes northeast, and then it's all just wilderness. And so who's wandering all the way down here and not encountering it? And plus the sound is it's not like like a bat or a dry twig. It's very meaty sounding, like something thick, but it's wood. And okay, I'm like, what kind of animal in North America is? I'm like, okay, it's not a woodpecker. I mean, this is a deep, meaty, rhythmic sound. And I'm like, and it doesn't sound like an axe either. That has that biting. Right. I cut thousands of cords of wood growing up. That's how we heated our home. So, okay, now I'm a little curious. So there's another little slope and then a step. And so I'm like, okay, if this is an animal, I'm going to sneak up on it because I want to see what this is. Yeah. So I just got my rifle low ready, and I'm moving. But then, I'm stopping because I'm like, okay, what if it's just, I fought fire, I've logged, trees can make weird sounds, but okay, I'm watching the tree tips and dead still. Occasionally there'd be a slight breeze, but we learned in fire school, at certain, how the head of the trees or the tip is moving to kind of rank the speed. And these little breezes weren't more than 5 miles an hour. So I'm like, okay. And I can see down there's no trees banging from some cross slope or weird wind that I'm not feeling. Everything's still. Okay, this is kind of odd. And then I would just stop and listen. And then I kept looking at my watch going, okay, time is going by here. And then another one, thok. And I've moved closer. So now I'm like, okay, I'm now 75 to 80% sure it's down there past this clearing. Whatever that's making that noise, I can now see kind of a copse or a peninsula or outgrowth of younger pine coming out from the taller old growth. And I'm like, it sounds like it's down in those trees. Oh, okay. But I'm like, this is just really weird. So I keep going. And now I'm really moving slow and quiet. And I'm like, each step I'm accounting for, because I'm like, what? I'm trying to get an angle as I'm coming down. There's some trees down this open, I wouldn't even call it a gulch or a ravine, but just this scoop between two ridges that I was progressing down. And I was moving so quietly too, because I was watching the trees like, okay, is something moving while I'm walking? But I'm like, no, I'm trying not to even hear my own footstep when I'm crunching on the grass and the frost and snow. And then there was another final descent, and then it started opening up into this clearing and where those trees were. And I'm, probably 75 yards in or out from that point. And I'm like, okay, I can see where these trees are, but this just, again, maybe I just need to turn around. This is getting a little silly. I've got a longer, hike up this mountain before dark. And then I get another smack, that thought hit sound, and I'm like, all right, it is absolutely in those trees. I'm already here. Let's keep going. So I start getting to flat ground, and there's this, must have been an old erosion point. I call it a half pipe that just went down between me and this clearing. And there's a couple pines. So I'm thinking I'm using them as cover. So I'm moving. Now I've got my rifle at a little higher port, because I'm like, okay, I'm getting really close and this is getting even weirder. And so I come around, and I know once I'm around this final pine, I've got to go through that little dip. And then I am level in that clearing with those trees. And I am just, at this point now, I'm just burning holes in those trees with my eyes going, okay, I'm getting really close. And this sounds strong, and okay, I'm getting a little weirded out at this point. So I got to that little half pipe. I mean, it was just barely a dip. I mean, probably that much, but it was sloped enough. I'm like, okay, once I'm out of that, okay, here we go. So I get that rifle in, and I've got a 1 to 10 power low LPVO, low power variable optic. I've got it on 1 because I'm in that tight timber, and I may have to just open eye shoot, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to point at that tree line. I've shot since I was 4 years old. So I know, basic rules of gun safety. I'm not going to point my rifle when I don't know what the target is. But I've got it tucked in just at a low ready.
Right.
Okay. So I come down that little dip, and this tree's right by me, and I'm like, okay. And then 5, I call them machine gun knocks, because it was not quite like a super rapid fire, but like a Browning 50 that has that slow thud, 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 but just really fast. Like I would have to hammer my fist as fast as I could into my palm, but it was the same deep, meaty sound, but like a machine gun, just boom, right in front of me. And I just went, oh my God, that's in the trees for sure. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And so here's what I did. I said, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm already here, but I'm going to circle around this. I guess I could call it a peninsula now. I kind of described it as a J, but it was just that projection of trees out from the old growth, kind of like a rounded off triangle. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sweep around it into this clearing and just be ready, because it's in those trees. And so I step out, and then I don't know. I think I know maybe what it did at this point, but I described it as a bomb going off in front of me. And this is where it gets hard to talk about. I'm sorry.
No, take your time. Take your time.
The sound I describe, it was force and violence. I mean, it sounded like a bomb went off, but it was made out of wood, right out of those trees. I mean, it was so explosive. I don't startle that easily. I've fired and trained a lot with firearms. I wrestled for 6 years. I've been hunting, my whole life, and I fought wildland fire. I'm not a badass or anything, but I just tend to not startle. But that sound stunned me. I just staggered back a couple steps, and I looked down for a second because my feet caught on just the grass and terrain. And I looked up back at the trees. And this is what I told everyone, Lance, for a year, including, I think, your friend Miguel, because I tried to talk to him. I did. I even went on his show. I couldn't, just like now, I couldn't say. What I told people is after that sound, I lost a section out of my life. And when I came back online, I was in the middle of that clearing, rifle up, backing out, keeping that reticle tight on that tree. That's what I told people, because even now, I worked in, I think I said in my email, I worked in inpatient psych in a clinical setting and degree for 10 years. So I've seen I've seen kind of the damage of trauma to people and mental illness. That's where the sickest of the sick go, is a state psychiatric hospital.
Yes. Yes.
But I wasn't trying to lie to him. I wasn't trying to lie to my lady or anybody I tried to tell. I just couldn't say it, because when I looked up, this thing was standing in those trees, and I could see here and up. And I estimated those trees, because I was level with the ground, those trees were about 8 foot tall, and his chest and and shoulders were above the tips of these trees. And it's just there. I mean, it's just there after that sound that just floored me. And, I think I put in the email, these trees were very pretty. Those were great Christmas trees. They were very green. This thing was more on the darker charcoal gray, but it had blends of lighter grays. And even, it's kind of like when you see a cat that has like a tortoise, I think, whatever they call them, tortoise shell, where those colors blend. For that, I didn't stare at him very long. I estimate maybe 3 Mississippis most, but there was some browns in there too. But he was just squared off with me, with his chest up, just squared off and his chin tucked, just looking down at me. And all I could see from he had a beard that went all the way up to his cheekbones, eye sockets, and then a full mustache and a beard. But, I couldn't tell how long it was, because I couldn't focus on exact details, because you're getting all of this.
Right.
But so his beard, I mean, I've seen dudes, I fought fire with guys like that. They got beards, up to here, and they extend into their chest hair.
Right.
And then, so I could just see forehead, strip of nose, and around here just black. His skin was black, and his hair was like mine, kind of close and tight down into his brow. And then just it wasn't long. It was just tight and dense. My lady and I have a Russian blue cat, and they have that very much more follicles per like square inch or whatever. So it just is more dense, and that's kind of how it was. And just, the thing that, other than you're seeing this is, I've squared off with big boar black bear before, and one that was actively, I think, hunting me. He was stalking me, and we had a little square down very close, and that wasn't fun. But I wasn't, this just, because he was just there, and the size of him. This is what got me is I've listened, of course, to now a lot of podcasts, and I wouldn't describe it as a bodybuilder physique. I would describe it like a Cape Buffalo. Just the thickness across his upper body. And I looked at my truck when I got back, and I'm like, his shoulders were at least they were as wide as the hood of my truck, and I have a 3/4 ton GMC. And I'm not trying to exaggerate. I mean, I'm level on the ground with this, unless he was standing on something. But that doesn't take away the width and just there's just so much there. And he's, of course, glaring just right at me. I didn't look him in the eye. I was focused right here because in my brain, I've trained enough. I've concealed carry since I legally could, and I take that very seriously. Even my hunting weapons I train with because it's a tool, and I spend a lot of time with them in dangerous stuff, and I just enjoy it. People can call me a gun nut, but I take it seriously. And these things yes, they are dangerous. And so I trained with military friends, and I just know how to shoot and scoot and all that fun stuff just because it's also fun, right? You're getting exercise. I'm not trying to be all tactical or anything, but I've been shooting since I was 4 or 5. Anyways, so I'm focused here because that's where I'm going to put that reticle. And this, I truly do not recall doing this. I do not. So I was partially telling the truth when I said I lost a clip of time. But here's what you do. If you got an attacker in front of you, right, you get off the X. So without even knowing how I did it or consciously, I took a diagonal into the center of that clearing, and now I'm backing up, in that posture people kind of unconsciously mimic when they're trying to be tactical. They hunch because it's a soft knee, so you can keep your sight point stable. That's all it is. You can't jog backwards and keep your rifle. So I snapped into that, and I've got that thing locked on that tree line. And this is the worst part was, every fiber of my being said, just run. But then the trained part of me said, you do not turn your back on this thing. But this is hard to even say out loud.
That's okay. It's okay. Just take your time, man.
But there was like the little, 5-year-old part of me just stuffed into a corner going, you're going to die. Because I just knew, I actually got the rifle sitting by me. I was tinkering around with it before we logged in. So it's an AR-10. So that's the original big brother of the AR-15. So it's chambered in .308 Winchester, the 7.62 NATO. Okay. I assembled that whole rifle myself. I picked out every part, and this was its big stress test, this hunt. So it seems kind of ridiculous to elk hunt with a magazine-fed battle rifle, but it was just a stress test for an all-purpose rifle. And I really enjoy the AR platform, the ergonomics, the pistol grip, the adjustable butt stop. I've hunted with
that's what we
Remington, and yeah. And I'll tell you what I carry now later.
I think you carry what I carry now.
It's at a 458.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I carry.
But knowing the capabilities, having hunted elk, animals, big animals, that are up to 1,000 pounds, and we have done it hunting with a 6mm Remington, and I've hunted with a 25-06 and taken game with one shot that size. But that AR-10, I had Barnes TTSX, those all copper hollow point rounds that they penetrate much further to lower weight. And I think I had the buffalo board round, so 2,900 foot per second, 150 grain copper round. And I was like, that little voice in my head, not the one going run, not the one saying, do not turn your back on this thing, was going, you're not going to be able to stop it.
No.
And when I told that to the first person I actually told this story, another podcaster, where I was like, I'm going to just say this out loud for the first time. I heard him say later, yeah, people overestimate these things, and yeah, they're just scared. And I said, no. I saw how thick and big it was just under 25 yards in front of me, and I could see this. I'm like, this thing is so thick, and I don't mean I couldn't kill it. there's a difference between stopping a charging animal and killing it. I mean, they can be one and the same too if you get a brain shot. I'm a decent shot, okay, but I'm a running headshot when that thing would probably be 3 strides on top of me. So I was just going to dump rounds here into its, like you would in a defensive shooting with a human. I hate to say, is you go center mass. You're not trying to do you are not going to do aim shots on the head, the hand, or the feet or something.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to poop your pants and just try and hit something. And that's all I knew that was going to happen. If he came out of that tree line, I just had to here's what I did. I don't know if it was a good tactical retreat decision. As I was backing up as fast as I can, it's still, I had just pivoted, so it's still close. I'm tripping. My heels are catching on the tall grass. I can't fall on my back. I've got a 30-pound pack of gear on me. I'm going to be a turtle, shooting between his legs as this thing just comes up on me. So I said, okay, here's what you're going to do, because I need distance from this thing, because all I could think was if it comes, all I can do is just stand my ground and shoot. Right. And maybe I can hit enough rounds. And I had a 10-round mag in the rifle, 1 chambered, and a spare on my web gear that I'm like, maybe I can hit that tactical reload. And if it doesn't kill him, but I just thought I'm not going to, like a big caliber, a big bore, break him to where he can't physically get to me, even if he's alive, so I could finish him off like a big bear. That's what you want for a big bear ultimately. If not, you can kill bear with a 2.23, a 5.56 easy if you get a nice through and through shot and you've got a decent bullet construction. But to stop them from killing you, you want to break them. Bones, pelvis, structure, so they fall down. And I'm like, this ain't gonna cut it. So I did these bounding maneuvers. I pivoted and I said 3 lunges. So about maybe, I don't know, however distance that is, 3 lunges, and then pivot back. And then back up a little bit, pivot. And I did that back and forth every time I turned around. I just, I thought that's it. That's when he's going to be just tearing. And when I got to the slope, and this is a steep, awful slope, just densely timbered, I still, at this point, I'm gaining that ground. I'm out more than 50 yards, closer to 75. I wanted to run so bad, man. But I'm like, you can't just turn and crash through these woods. You have to keep doing this. You have to keep pivoting, because you may not hear him in time if he comes out of those trees. So I just made a deal. Okay, I'll go 6 lunges and then I'll pivot. And I just kept doing that the whole way up this mountain. And when I first got to that clearing before the final knock, it was almost 2:00. So I had been stalking this whole distance for an hour with these sequence of knocks happening. And so I'm just tearing up this mountain. I mean, I'm glad I stay in shape, because, man, I didn't stop. The only time I stopped, excuse me, I'm sorry, was to,
that's okay.
The only time I stopped was to pivot and look and make sure he wasn't on my tail. And then I would keep going. And it seemed like forever going up. And then I saw a flat spot in front of me. It was the road. I just put that last spurt on. I crashed into the embankment deliberately and just pivoted, put my rifle between my legs because it was a sheer drop off. And I just thought, any minute I'm going to see this head coming up above that road, and I'm just going to, give it to him, I guess. I mean, I didn't want to engage this thing. But then I stopped for a second, and there's, snow on the road, and I'm just stunned. I'm sitting there just with that rifle between my legs, and then I'm like, he didn't follow me. You made it all the way up. And I looked down, the stupidest thing, I looked at him and go, oh, my boot's untied. And so I clumsily tie my boot, and then I'm on the road where we had come in and out of. I was so shocked. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. That's never happened to me. I mean, I got my hunting license at, I think in Idaho then, it was 11. And by 12, my dad would be like, you go there, I'll go there. See you back in the truck at night. If something happens, fire off 3 shots. If you get a game, start dressing it out and I'll find you.
Okay.
But I was like, I don't know what to do. And I looked down and it was my dad's boot print from the previous day going back towards camp. And I'm like, okay, that's the way back to camp. And I don't remember the walk back. I don't remember. I set my bag and rifle down outside my truck. I didn't remember this. I didn't. But then I got in my truck, and for some reason, I've got it sitting here in my gun room too. I had a 454 Casull, a Ruger Alaskan that I was carrying. I didn't carry that day because I thought I haven't seen. There's no bear up here. They're not stupid enough. So I had it off, but I put it right on the console in my truck, and I just lost it, man. I just lost it for, I don't know. I tried, I could, it took me 5 minutes to get the key in the ignition of my truck and turn the heater on. I thought I was going into pure shock. I was losing it. I mean, just fully bearded, tears running down my face. I'm just like, and here's what came to my brain. I just walked out of an ambush. Those knocks only happened when I stopped or when I was like, yeah, I'm going to move away. I'm done. They only did that. They never happened. And that, I think my brain processed that on the way back. But then a part of me goes, it let you go. But the other part of me said, you idiot. How stupid are you? You've been hunting since you were your earliest memories. How did you let this thing draw you in? Well, because I had no concept of wood knocks. I mean, I had listened to stuff before. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but that has never been on my brain of like, oh, these are wood knocks. That's a Sasquatch. I was like, what is this? So I just sat there and I lost it. And I would just go, you got to pull it together. You cannot be like this when dad gets back to base camp tonight. You got to pull it together. Then I'm like, he's out there and that thing's out there, but it let me go. It could have taken me. I was just clueless. I'm wandering. He could have taken me at any time.
Sure.
And he came back and we sat there eating dinner, and I know I was just 1,000 yards there. And all I could think was, I am not leaving this truck. That was day 3. We were planning on 11 days. I had to leave early and go back to work for a little bit back in Washington. I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pretend to walk a direction until my dad's out of sight, and then I'm going to sit in my truck for the next 8 days. And from dawn till dusk, I'm keeping all my guns right here. But then I'm like, you have to tell your dad. You're letting him hunt out there, you coward. Like, you have to tell him. Doesn't matter how crazy it is.
Right.
But so what I did was, I didn't sleep that night because all I could see was, I'm sleeping literally. I've got a 3/4 ton truck extended cab. I'm only 5'7" and I'm not huge build. So I could sleep kind of curled up in the back seat. And I just sat there with that revolver. I strapped it on the chest rig and I just laid there all night. And then I woke up pissed off. And I'm like, I'm grabbing my speed reloader. I'm grabbing another larger mag for that thing. And I'm going back down there. What does that thing think it's doing messing with me like that? And then my dad's like, all right, well, I'm going here. Where are you going? I'm like, that ridge right here. And I walked 25 yards from camp and just broke down crying involuntarily. I didn't even know I was doing it till my face was wet. And I just walked that ridge away from that slope. And all I said to my dad was, he goes, oh, did you find anything good? Anything down there? Is it worth it? I said, nope, not worth going down there. Because I don't know. I didn't think he'd believe me. And I couldn't say it again. I know it sounds stupid. Why would I talk to even someone who does a podcast and not be able to say it out loud? Because I thought if I did, I would snap. that would be it. I would just break. I thought I would break because even talking about it now, this was 2021. I don't, Lance, I can count on now, even with talking to you, both hands, the number of people with room to spare, even talking to you that I've told this whole thing to. Because it does. I never cared if anyone thought I was nuts. I just didn't want to say it out loud because if I told it without what I saw, then it's just a crazy story about something scary sound you couldn't identify. But when you say what you know it was, what do you do with that? Because, and again, I've told people, and they can look at me any way they want, but it's like,
well, the only way people can really fully comprehend and if you will use the word understand is if they themselves have had an encounter not at 200 yards but in close proximity. And when you have a profound moment like this and there's triggers when you talk about it or you can't sleep, I'm going to say there's varying levels of post-traumatic. It's evident, and it does get better with time. It does. Um, just talking about it is huge, is massive, but it's an experience that changes and alters your life, and you don't think about that. I think people get mad because no one ever no one discussed this with them. How come no one's told them these creatures exist? Especially hunters. You know, my dad has a valid question. He said, how come I've been hunting for 65 years. How come I've never seen one? I said, Dad, that's a great question. I can't answer that. But here's the thing. How do you know something hasn't seen you and decided not to come out and reveal itself? And every time you're in the woods, how many times do you have a knife on your side, a firearm on your side, a rifle in your hand, a bow in your hand? If it kind of knows what those things are, it's got a higher level of thinking and it might be hurt. Do you think it's going to step out? Probably not. Just saying. Don't know that for a fact, but I'm just saying.
yeah. So what I did is I stayed out for the full hunt though. We just decided. So the pictures I showed you, that's the next day. It snowed like, I don't know, 5-6 inches. And we actually, for the first time since I was a little kid, for no good reason, we went out together as a team. My dad's like, well, let's just maybe both of us wander down this area. And it was really close. I took that picture from where I estimated I came off that slope when I was getting away from it. That's where I think. That's why I turned around, just took a picture of the road. But we wandered down into those bottoms, but it snowed so much. It's crazy how you can it's like a totally different place. If I could have been walking the exact same steps I was the day before, and now it looks like a different whole other mountain. But I stayed down there. We finished the hunt. We didn't get anything. But then when we left, my dad said, hey, do you have any time the following weekend? The hunt's still going on. And I thought about it, and I'm like, I have I think I had a 4-day weekend. I'm like, at this point, I had shoved that down so hard and nothing else had happened. So I'm like, I went home and I was all raw. And I said, yeah, I'm coming back the next weekend and I'm even going to be armed more to the teeth. So I got one of my Vepr 12 shotguns. I don't know if you've ever played around with one of those. It's an AK that chambers up to 3-inch Magnum 12 gauge. And I stoked that thing full of not deer hunting slugs, but penetrator slugs, 10-round mags. I grabbed it. It seems silly. I mean, it kind of is. But I drove up after work by myself. I got into those mountains at 9 o'clock. The clouds were so low. It wasn't even fog. It was clouds. And I drove until I found an abandoned logging road, backed my truck up against the dense trees and was like, all right, I'm staying here another 3 days. If you want it, I got it. I had 10 millimeter on my hip. It's so silly. I know it's bravado, but I wanted to go back and finish that hunt, but there was no way I wasn't, Yeah, let's. If I have time to use any of this stuff, maybe I have a chance this time.
And that's happened a lot when people have these encounters. If they go back in the woods, which a handful of them have, they actually will buy bigger firearms with heavier loads.
Yeah,
And uh, after some of the experiences we had at deer camp, that's when I switched to the 458.
yeah,
And my dad looked at me and he says, "What the hell are you going to shoot?" And I said, "Whatever it
yeah.
is, I want it to go down."
It'll
I
go. Yeah,
And my sidearm was a 500 Smith and Wesson,
yeah.
and I was using those Bear Montana loads, 440 grain, and he
Hmm.
goes,
Hmm.
"Knight, what are you?" My dad would look at me, and I would say, "Whatever it is," I would just be very vague, and I'd say, "Whatever it is, I want it down. I'm not going to be, I kind of casually looked at my brothers. I said, "I'm not going to be a David Politis,
Hmm.
missing 411."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they knew it. They knew what I was doing, and that's still a lot of gear to haul in. It gets kind of heavy. I had that Alaska holster on, and
hmm,
but that 454 will do the trick too.
yeah.
Uh,
Brass solids. Yeah, I kept. Yeah, I switched when I went back there. I actually went back at the advice of a therapist to a degree. They said if it's literally not safe to go there, this guy was a combat vet that really helped me, and he was actually my therapist for a short. He's the one that kind of helped me turn it around.
Good.
And he said, I want you to write down every single excruciating detail of that whole hunt, everything you can. And it was the first time that I guess I admitted what I saw, but I wrote it first. And he said, at some point, I want you to go burn that. Now, it'd be best if you could go back to that place. But if you're honestly don't think it's safe to go, don't go. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a hero. I went
Yeah.
back 3 years later, so 2024, ostensibly on a bear hunt. That's what I told my lady. I did have bear and wolf tags, but yeah, I had my 458, 325 grain flat nose brass solids in that, and then buffalo bore those mono metal flat nose solids in my 454, and then 10 millimeter on my hip with hard cast rounds, and a spare mag speed. I Here's the thing. I in no way, shape, or form wanted to shoot it. I don't want to ever see anything like that ever again. I don't want to engage one. So if you ever like choose to use this or something for an episode, I do not want to engage these things. I don't want it, but I am not going to be at least at best of my capabilities. I'm not going to be the one that goes down or if I can. So, but it doubles both those rounds work very well for bear. And there are grizzly up where I hunt, where I go in the panhandle. There are grizzlies. They're not as, big Alaskan browns, but they're still big. So those rounds are appropriate for both hunting a bear for meat with the black bear, which is what I'm doing, and a grizzly. And what I've just told other people, yeah, there's some big things out there. So you just want to be ready. I
Mm-hmm.
I still and I again, people think you exaggerate when you've seen the thickness that when you've stood against up around big game and stuff and hunted it and you've dressed them out and you've been near big bears, that's what really floored me, man. And when someone asked me, how would you describe it, more human or ape? And I said, if I didn't hear the word Sasquatch, I would say monster or giant. I wouldn't say ape at all. And I couldn't necessarily see its features because its skin. I looked like a Spartan helmet, right? Like the black and then the nose. It didn't
Yeah.
appear really broad or anything. It was just kind of a black strip where his nose. So I didn't see all those details, but it didn't look gorilla like. I guess in the outline, it just looked like. I mean, humanoid, but so preposterous in the overall mass of everything, from its neck to his chest and it was just preposterous. And just be looking at something like that that doesn't enter a frame of reality that, yeah, like you said, you have any way of coping with. And I kind of wonder that 458 being a lower pressure round. I mean, it'll thump something. There's days I'm like, I need to get a 416 Rigby, with brass solids that will go through, an elephant in one end, not the other, or a 416 Ruger. I thought about that.
Well, what we did honestly is my buddy Wiley Dave. He's a welder.
I've listened to your interview with him so many times now.
Oh, okay. So
many times, yeah.
Let's just say we've modified our rounds. They will go through anything.
Good.
And getting back to the part of your story, I haven't hunted a lot of elk. I've hunted a lot of whitetail and some muleys. We have a few in Oklahoma out in the Panhandle, but mainly whitetail. Are elk, since I haven't hunted a lot of elk, are elk drawn into that you're aware of to any sounds like that? Or do you think that it very well knew? That's kind of hard to jump into the mind of this creature.
I've been trying for a long time. Yeah.
Do you think it knew it smelled you, or knew you were up on that ridge higher and it drew you in?
Yeah. Oh, he wasn't trying to lure elk in. You can bugle and call no, that's why I was like, this is just too weird of a sound. No, it was drawing me in. I am as positive as I can get without reading its mind. Just based on the sequence, the first 5, I thought about going down, and I turned and watched that downward slope. I think it saw me. I don't know how, but I mean, I could see that copse of trees kind of through. I mean, even that far down. I mean, that's I walked probably 250 yards, but that's going down those things. So just making a straight line to it, if a crow flew, maybe closer, I think it saw me. I saw a lone person. But here's the thing. The way those final knocks happened, that 5 machine gun knock sounded to me like a warning, like you need to back off or get gone, or maybe it was an alert to the other ones. That final knock was anger. It was pissed. And here was my original thought. It was drawing me in. It was opportunistic. That's how I always felt about this. It was opportunistic, not deliberate. It wasn't hunting me as a person. It was hunting a lone possible target, prey. And I thought at first, like, my rifle, you saw in that picture, is about as camouflaged as the rest of me. And right. I had it just at that low ready the whole time. I don't know. I thought maybe, okay, it was drawing me in, like, either just to play with me or just like, hey, maybe if I can snatch him, maybe not, but I'm bored too. And then maybe it wasn't until I came that 25 yards in and my gun moved away from me, it could see, oh, this is a rifle. I couldn't really tell what that was. And then it was like, you asshole, I'm not going to get shot. So you better, boom, you better get out of here. I don't think that now. I actually don't. I think it was pulling me in. That was the way those knocks happened. That's why my brain panicked afterwards. You idiot. You walked right into an ambush. This thing led you in. Every time you thought and even made a move to leave, that's the only time those knocks happened, and you kept following them. It was, perfect.
Oh, yeah. You didn't know.
I didn't know.
You never heard those before.
No, I mean, if that was my, that mentality. All my early childhood memories are hunting, fishing, being out in remote wilderness areas. I fought fire in those, I got out by myself. I was one of those people. I was a hopeful skeptic. Like, that would be super cool if these were real, but come on. If no one's caught one, we haven't seen them. If my dad hasn't seen one, his dad hasn't seen one. Come on. Yeah, I don't know.
I think the
I
reason why so much of this skepticism, which is, I love skepticism because it does allow someone to bring up good questions. Not that all questions can be answered, because they cannot. My dad had good questions, but I was very honest. I said, I don't know. I don't live with them. But I think that because there's a lot of factors that are against us automatically, I think they have been known about. Certain people have known about these. I'm going to be posting a show soon. I did an interview with a national park ranger who retired, and he did an interview with me, and I did 4 separate interviews because I was just blown away. And in the interview, the reason why he's doing it is because he wants to inform people that the national parks are dangerous. And one of the dangers is these Sasquatch have not only removed people against their will, but that they have been possibly responsible for deaths in the park, and it's been covered
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. I can
And
see that.
he couldn't do anything at that time, nor could they tell the family what really happened.
Mhm.
And he feels horrible. And so it's been going on. There are departments, if you want to say organizations, agencies collectively, that have known about these, but they work very, very hard and diligent at covering up in many different ways this truth. Um, and so it's really hard to get the word out, because sometimes people don't want to talk about it, which is perfect for them. And when they do talk about it, uh, people instinctively, you know, as humans, we don't want to be ridiculed, embarrassed, made fun of, told we're a nut, we're crazy, because we are sometimes in certain professions that require a certain level of reputation, professionalism. And, my wife said, do you really want to get on and talk about these experiences you had? I said, why? Because they happened. I'm not making anything up. They happened. And I can't unseen what I saw. My brother can't unseen what he saw and experienced. And I can tell you, I've got recordings of what we heard at deer camp. So I don't I don't have the problem with it. If people have a problem, then that's their deal. But so I think it's a multitude of issues why people sometimes, we haven't really heard about these creature sightings, only in if someone comes forward and has enough courage. Um, and sometimes it's kept close to the family or close in a hunter's group, and they just don't take it any further. They go, we're not telling anybody about this.
I think, you think I would have heard a lot of stories growing up, living in those areas, but one that stands out to me is this gentleman was my elementary school teacher, and then the first guy to buy me a legal drink at 21. I worked on that road crew with him in the summers when I got 18 and older. So he was used to, put me in detention all the time. And then he was buying me my first drink. And so this guy and I would spend 10 hours a day just out driving those roads, just keeping them open. I was the seasonal young guy. So I'd get out with my chainsaw and, he'd drive the truck, and I'd cut limbs and trees out of the road. And we just keep doing that all summer. And then his son and I ended up initial attack and a fire together. We got to be really good friends. He's a high school teacher now, or a principal, but his dad, that gentleman, he told us this story actually in class sometimes, but we were sitting in the pickup on one of those remote roads, and he said, I don't even know how we got on the topic, but he said, I haven't hunted the Frank church since I was in my 30s or something like that. And he's in his 60s when he was talking to me. And he said, Dan, I was out there and been hunting my whole life, and working on ranches. And he goes, I was out of my horse back in this area, and I know all those areas. He's like, and I was deep back there on my horse. And he said, all of a sudden, this horrendous stench hit me. And he goes, my horse started trying to throw me. And he goes, I shoot off that horse and it doesn't flinch. It's trying to throw me. And he goes, Then about not 50 yards in front of me, maybe 40, this big black thing on two legs walks out of the tree line. And he goes, Dad, he looked at me, and this is a big, rangy, tough guy. He looks at me, and his face is twitching, and his eyes are welling up in tears. And he goes, that was not a bear. That was not a bear, and I have never gone back, and I will never, he emphasizes, go back in that wilderness area. And I said, well, we're almost there. And he's like, yeah, we're in a truck. We're going to go home tonight. I'll never go back. And, his son and I, again, we initial attack fires. So we spent nights out there, just sleep on the side of a hill talking. And he goes, Dad's not, he goes, if he's lying, I don't know why he is, but he will not, he's not lying about not going back there. And he goes, he's even today, to the point he died, he was scared talking about it.
And it makes everybody different. And that's, my brother went back and he took me back. And the one time I went with him back there, it was fenced off, but I went back and the gate was open. So I kind of went in there and did some filming real quick for the show. And then I got out of there. It's on kind of private property, but it affects everybody different. Some hunters, they sell all their stuff and they don't go back. That's it.
Yeah.
They hang up everything, and fishing gear is the same way. If they're out wading fish, or they say they're trout fishermen or whatever, I've talked to some individuals where they just hang it up, they sell everything, and like, I'm not going back. It affects so profoundly, so intimately, so deeply that it's just an indescribable emotional fear that they've never experienced. They don't want to ever experience it again. And so it's just, you can't put into words. Everybody's different. And I don't blame people, but I do find that people that, and I thought that was a really excellent idea and project to do, is the journaling I heard you talk about.
Yeah.
Because you're able to say things that maybe you don't want to tell someone,
Mm-hmm.
and you can either burn it or you can save it and come back down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a really important, is to journal. And I'm going to start getting into more of that to help individuals. That's actually a very, very good idea. But it takes a lot of courage to go back, and you want to enjoy the outdoors like you've been for years. And I find it very troubling to hear what you said, and it absolutely sounds like it was kind of luring you in like an ambush. And what makes me wonder is, was there more than one around there?
And I'm probably could be wrong about all this. I think it might have been drawing me away from the other ones. Because like I said, twice when I went to turn to go up that game trail, that's when the 5 and then the 2 knocks happened, the sequence. And both times were when I was moving upslope away from it. And if it wanted to kill me, I'm like, why would it have given those 5 rapid fire knocks that any sane person would have been like, I'm getting out of here? Instead, I'm like, oh, it is right in the trees for sure. I'm going to go see what it is, even though that is hair. I mean, my hackles were up, but I'm like, ooh, here we go. I've already come this far. Let's see what this is, so I don't, wasted all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that final, I think, this is just my opinion. I've listened to other podcasts and people talking. I don't know if it swung, because if it swung something to make that huge explosive sound, it would have had to have been like a 8 to 10 inch diameter tree that it was holding, which it was obviously big enough to do that. I wonder if it grabbed one of those green pine trees and just snapped it, because when you snap that green pine, it does go off like a gunshot. And if it was big enough, it could bend a live tree that's that thick and just break it suddenly, and that would produce that explosive sound. I mean, you hear stuff like that when you're on a fire, and superheated gases inside the trees are making them explode and stuff, or I've logging heard stuff, live trees snap in half, right? And it's pop, sometimes that pop, pop. I don't know, but just the way it ended, that was more of like those 5 were a warning either to me or everybody. But I think it was to me like, okay, you need to not get closer. It wanted to maybe pull me away from the other ones. But when I was going to go into the trees where it was hiding, watching me, it was like, oh, no, you need to turn around, buddy. And it probably just saw my rifle too, maybe the whole time. And this was its final warning, and I didn't heed it. I went towards it more because really I would have gotten close to those enough trees. It could have just reached out and snatched me. So if it really wanted to kill me and it was worried about that rifle, I'm like, it would have just waited. I would have gotten so close. It could have just reached out and just, I mean, it wouldn't have to do anything, but just squish my head or whatever. There's nothing at that point I could even feasibly do.
So
at
the closest proximity, what was the distance you were at when you saw it? How
just under 25 yards, so 23, 24, that apart from each other.
Okay.
Yeah, I shoot at that distance a lot, so I had that. And I even, the next day, laser finder I keep in my hip pouch, and just, okay, yeah, that's roughly that close. Yeah, and like looking at trees, kind of ranging up with measurements. God damn, it really was probably close to 10, if maybe a little bit under, like 9. I would give up 9.5 foot tall, but not below 9 foot, unless it was standing on something. And the width of the shoulders were unmistakable. You just look at the truck and just go, oh my God, from 25 yards, it was that wide. That thing was huge,
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord,
I think that's a part. The shoulders are a feature that a lot of people say that's just, it's so exaggerated, their mind can't comprehend.
Yeah, there was just so much mass. I mean, I couldn't see what the rest of it was like because he was in the trees. So I don't know if it was tapered down, kind of like that V-shaped bodybuilder look, or more blocky, but he just looked, it was, I gotta say, impressive. I'd like to know, because I taught the anatomy cadaver lab in college when I was getting my degree, and so I enjoyed anatomy, that gross anatomy part, and I would like to, I'd like to know what their bone structure is like to support, because that's where I've heard people logically try and talk this out and go, well, you look at the tallest human and they have problems with their cardiovascular system, and that's true. And but you explode a person up to 10 foot tall. I'm like, this isn't a person. This has nothing to do with people. Maybe it does. I've listened to Melba Ketchum's interviews, but this thing, it's like the only comparison to a human was the humanoid outline. That's where everything else stopped. The proportions and mass just, they don't translate to just making a big, like even that half Thor Bjornsson, that's been the world's strongest man in the mountain. He is a huge man.
Oh yes.
That wouldn't translate over with this thing, because it's just the dimensions they just don't make sense. Even if you made a human 10 foot tall that was really muscular, the mass wouldn't translate. We're not that thick, even big. I mean, I competed in Olympic lifting for a decade. I competed in powerlifting for 8 years. I wrestled for 6 years growing up. I know what big, really big, strong people look like. I've stood right next to them and trained with them. Humans aren't that thick front to back. And I didn't see this thing sideways, but you could just tell that's what was my brain as I was backing away was going, this gun is not enough. I could put all those rounds in its breadbasket. I don't know how far they're getting in, because structurally, it just shut me down so hard from so many different angles. That's why I just felt like a rabbit just backing up from a wolf or a lion, because it's like, oh, here I am. I would face a grizzly with that 308. Absolutely.
Oh,
and even a charging one. And I know what a bear is. So if it's charging me, I'm going to do what I have to do.
right. But I think you're on track. It's you can't compare any of the you can you can compare that it was standing, more or less assume that it was standing like a human. It had broad chest, upper torso like a human. It had a cranial aspect to it like a human. But as far as hair, it had this growth of hair that I've seen some guys that you know been out in the woods a long time. They can probably grow that too, but
Yeah.
just the sheer girth, not only the height but the girth. I can't even imagine the if you consider that the muscle mass. I suspect their metabolic rate is much higher than ours because you're out in the environment. They're surviving in a very hard, harsh climate with bitter cold
Yeah.
temperatures, high
Horrible. Yeah.
elevation, and they can sustain. They're here in Oklahoma at elevations of only 700, and it's just miserable hot. So they can really translate in such a swing of temperatures. But this is the first I've heard about, and hearing this, I'm now just thinking how many of other people, what have they drawn other people in with that similar tactic? Out in the middle of nowhere, one person. Uh,
Yeah.
I just wonder because I've
It,
not heard this.
I have analyzed this I was analyzing it as it was happening, but I wouldn't, I guess the thought of something drawing me in seemed silly. So I just was like, what the heck are these sounds? And but then just in immediately retrospective, like I said, I got back to the truck. I'm like, you idiot. You walked into an ambush. Every single one of those knocks. It just like it was like, how did you not see that? As I'm losing my mind, sitting in the seat of my truck, just breaking down, just sobbing. I'm like, how did you just do that? You're not that stupid. You just followed those in and it just led you by the nose because every single time you were turning to go around, it drew you in again. And yeah, my only thought was ambush because I'm like, that's why I was interested in that area. I would be sitting in those trees waiting for those elk to come out at dawn into that little clearing to feed. I've done that before. So maybe he was just waiting for some elk and then was like, hey, what's this guy? I
Mm,
don't think so now. Because again, it could have had me so easy just by keeping quiet at the end and letting me get right towards those trees. And it could have snatched me without me shooting it easy. So I'm just now I just came to terms with this probably a week ago. I think that's why I was reaching out to you because I just listened to all your podcasts, and I just like your thought process. And I'm like, maybe if I say this out loud, maybe this is it. Maybe it was trying to pull you closer to it to distract you because there was other ones trying to move out of that area and they were just ahead of you. And so it was pulling you in. And if this thing wasn't the alpha, then I don't want to see the big one.
mm-hmm.
So that really, and I could still be wrong. Maybe it had ill intent, but now it just really doesn't. It's like, nope, it could have had me if it didn't have to give me those last knocks and it didn't have to show itself. It was taking a chance, but it was obviously not afraid of me. And I think it knew what my rifle was. It was not afraid of me. It was like, just try it and you better leave now. That was just that's what was coming off of it. You just need to go now.
Did it make any sounds or anything?
Never. Other than those sounds that I can't prove it was making because I never saw it do anything. it just was there after that huge knock, and I staggered back, and just for that blink of a moment, looking down at my feet to see what catch my feet, and then looking up, and it's there amongst those trees. It never made a sound. There was never any more sounds. But let me tell you, and I have this recorded, but you can't hear much but wind noise. Okay, the night before. That night, and I never said anything to anybody until I told my son a year later too. I finally told him because he watched me kind of spiral too, and I finally told him.
Okay.
That night before, we'd already gotten to bed, bedded down. It was a cold, little breezy, not super windy night. I started hearing this super deep, rhythmic sound that was just so low frequency. So again, I was in the cab of my truck. It was too cold to bivouac out in the wilderness. We're not doing that, right? We're staying down there. I mean, it got down to like 14 that night, I think. This sound. So I'm laying in the cab, and it was, I could hear it, feel it more so vibrating the windows of my truck and the plastic, all the molding, and it physically hurt my right ear. But even when I plugged that ear, I could feel it. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? We're at the top of this mountain. There's anybody that we've passed hunting is way down and by the river, down in the bottoms, way down off these mountains. Like, what is, and then I'm just like, okay, maybe there's a generator, like, sound travels. It can just travel crazy distances and do weird things. But I'm thinking, okay, but I'm like, this hurts. And when I would turn away, I'm like, this sound is coming from that big granite slide area to our west. This is unidirectional. And I pulled out my phone. I had my phone in the truck, and I put on these cheap recorders that measures also, I guess, the decibels. So you can see the lines bouncing perfectly in time with this rhythmic sound that I couldn't really hear except for feel it in my eardrum, my right ear, which was facing west, the way the truck was positioned.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is, and then I would started timing it with my watch and going, there's these peaks and valleys and rhythms, and it's changing. I'm like, okay, every this so many minutes, this rhythm is changing, and it's changing in a weird way. And it was, I mean, the real part, I'm like, I want to go to sleep. But I was pressing my head into my rolled up jackets, trying to not, because it physically hurt, but I could still just feel it, that vibrating, like someone that has bass.
Yes.
Playing, you could feel them like a block away before you hear them. But,
Right.
Again, we're in the wilderness on the top of a mountain, and this wasn't music. It sounded to me mechanically like the way the pulse was going, but it kept changing. It would do these very set intervals, but not like music. And I'm timing them.
You still have the recording?
I do. It's just like an MP3. I can send it to you. Absolutely. I can almost hear, because I held my phone out the window, because this went on for hours. And here's the trippiest thing. At one point, this is the middle of the night. This single prop plane comes buzzing towards our ridge low. And I was like kind of mashing stuff. I'm like, this is really irritating. And I thought, I was so tired because we've been humping it up and down those hills mountain all day. I'm like, maybe this plane will make it stop. As soon as the plane got overhead, it stopped. And then for 10 minutes, I'm like, well, thank God I can go to sleep. But I'm like, I don't know what the hell that was. And then I'm like, okay. And I'm starting to fall asleep. And then it picks up, and now it's incessant. That's the only way I can say it. It's beating faster and like almost like it's irritated or anxious. This rhythm picks up tighter, and then these longer drawn out woo, and I could see this on my phone, but it's like it's picking up like in an angry and I just, what I did? This is kind of goes back to whatever, staying up there. I got so pissed off. I strapped my gun on and stood out of the truck, and it's the middle of the night. And you couldn't see much, but it wasn't much cloud, so there was some starlight, and I just stood out there facing that westerly direction. And what's weird, once I was out of the truck, I could still feel it, but it wasn't until I got back in and I could feel the vibration that it was just like, oh my God, this is, I mean, I can feel it standing naked outside the truck. But if I turned my ear away, I stood out there, and I could feel it, but it just wasn't as pronounced because my truck wasn't vibrating around me. And you know what? I got up in the morning and my dad was sleeping in his truck by me, and he got up and he's like, "How'd you sleep?" I'm like, "How the hell did you sleep with that sound last night?" I said, "It was like my eardrum felt like it was going to break for like hours with this vibe, and he goes, "Well, I don't hear that great, so I didn't hear anything." And I'm just like, seriously? I'm like, I have the recording on my phone watching the bumps and dips, and I can, even to this day, if I put headphones on, you can hear wind, the wind noise, but it's like I can hear the gaps in the wind sound that timed with those vibrations, but you can't like almost hear it. It's almost the absence of sound in that thing. And I just completely was like, that was the weirdest thing that's ever happened. And then the next day I run into this thing. Was that these things, the whole infrasound thing? Or was this?
It's very likely because
you think so? Okay.
So tell me, did you ever tell your dad? And I know you told your son, it sounds like, but did you ever tell your dad or any of the family members? Secondly, what is on your mind nowadays when you go out into the woods hunting or hiking and things, as far as what's your mindset like? And third, what advice do you have for people that were kind of like you initially? Because it doesn't sound like you were into the subject, but you had that wish, like, oh, I hope it'd be really cool to see one. But what do you tell someone that's a naysayer, or someone that just has no clue these creatures exist?
I've never to my dad's face told him this story like I'm telling you. I was just back down there, helping them on the property, and probably had a couple too many drinks one night, and I just broke down and just apologized to him. I said, I should have told you. I should have told you that night what was out there. And I said it just like that to him, and I didn't say because this was very soon after.
Okay.
And I just said that, and he goes, "It's okay. I mean, I'm here. You're safe." I don't know why, he just couldn't because I don't know if you'd have believed me. I did tell my sister the full thing. She believes it. But as far as mindset, I mean, again, I stayed that whole hunt. I came back by myself. I didn't go up on that ridge by myself, but I continued to hunt. Went back into the Frank Church for 2 weeks the next year. So my mindset is just, if you hear something weird, maybe, don't go following and getting yourself. That's what kind of threw me off though afterwards. Like, why the heck did I just go in and follow those? I mean, that was just so obvious that this was kind of a deliberate thing to get me down there, at least in whatever regard it was, whether ambush or just to draw me away from maybe other ones. But so I'm just like, hey, I thought I was alert before. Now I'm even more so. But after a time, I just like, hey, they haven't got you yet. That one didn't get you. Let's just go out there not looking for trouble like I've always done. I don't want to have trouble with bear unless I'm hunting in them. And I'm going to, try and take them quick and easy. So I'm just going to be aware, but I'm also going to be, if it ever comes to it, at least having some firearm on me that I think can penetrate and get in there to do enough damage, to take it, that's not just my even a 308 that, like, again, that seems silly. And yeah, if I get a full mag into one of those things, it's going to kill it. I'm not saying they're bulletproof or invincible, at least from what I could tell, it looked like a living, breathing thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I don't really think I have advice for people. It's just, I mean, I could say a billion different things about, just being prepared out there. And I know I go solo hunting a lot. I go solo camping and hiking a lot. And I know that's number one, probably worst thing you can do, but I love it. My dad did it by himself, growing up, I did it. I just love being out there by myself. That's why I go,
Mm-hmm.
and it is to push myself, just to prove that I can still do these things and survive. So I don't really have advice. I don't understand going out and, hitting trees and trying to make calls and stuff. I just, from a hunting perspective, yeah, you can, rattle antlers with deer. You can do bugles for elk and calls. And then there's other animals, like, is it Wiley, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
He did the coyote calls, right? He's a professional at that. And
yes,
yeah, you can, but it's like, if you're, it just the way I've kind of watched in shows and stuff, people going about it, just from like if you were an animal, or would this really pull you in doing this stuff? Like, you're not tricking anybody. I think these things are obviously intelligent enough. They're not, and maybe they do respond. I make no judgment, honestly, or I don't even have an opinion on what they are. I saw that for that little glimpse of time, that's it. And I don't know what to say about it. I've even resisted the idea of thinking about is this a another hominin or hominid, or one of some that branch of off of us, that whatever, or is it Nephilim? All these ideas, I'm like, I don't know. I do come from a scientific background. The scientific method just doesn't, I would just be making complete guesses and wild ideas up based on that just one glimpse of it, what it possibly could be. I just be careful. That's all I can say out there. Bring a compass, bring a firearm, know how to start a fire in multiple different ways. So if you get stuck, have some way to shelter up if you get stuck out there. Have warm enough clothing if the sun goes down and you're stuck. Do all those things first.
right.
People get lost, and it's easy to do. Like I said, I carry a compass always. And I even have a backup compass, because it's like I know my safe points. I know if I get back to this ridge, I can see, another location to get. People should have all that in order. Like those guys here in Washington I think it was in Washington, that died last winter or something. They were going to go look out for a Sasquatch. And yeah, the Gifford, I don't go up on that west side at all. Actually, I don't do much in Washington State. I always go back home to Idaho when I want to get out there in the woods. But they got lost and stuck in a snowstorm and froze to death. And it's just a horrible, tragic thing. And it happens to people. Just be prepared for what you're getting into. And if you're not ready for it, don't get into it. And I think that's the way with these things. Like, you want to see one till you see one, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's a very, very good point. And I always say, know your terrain, whatever you're going to be in, hiking, know what indigenous wildlife is in and around you and how they hunt. What sounds do they make? Are you is it mating time for bobcats or mountain lions? What do they sound like? And when we go out and do predator calling, there's certain things we got to make sure wind direction. And I was going to ask about wind direction by the time you got down there on those mountains. I'm sure it's just like you said, it's whipping, it's coming up and it's going around. I just wondered if it was your scent had traveled down into that.
He'd probably scented us in the morning, because, you get in the morning, that cool air will drop down and bring your scent down slope. But at that time of day, afternoon, I just know that from fire, when the fire can come uphill from you, that breeze that I would sense periodically was in my face. So coming up slope. So at that point, he couldn't smell me. I don't think. I think it saw me pretty early on too.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's a good point too. With that AR-10, it's camo that you were, it falls along the body line. So I bet you if you were walking down the mountain that way, which makes sense, uh, that it didn't see it to the very last till it finally.
yeah. I mean, I've got it sitting right by me if you want me to put it in front of the camera.
Yeah.
But it's I did this custom job on it
Oh, nice.
with Duracoat. And then after, I'm just going to flip it. You can see I added, after that hunt, sorry, it's tight in this little room.
No,
I
that's
added
okay.
an offset red dot sight where you
Oh, I
can.
see.
So
I
I'm here
see.
on scope, yeah, and I can just cant it just because
I like that.
it was like, okay, an LPVO, even at 1 power, I mean, it's kind of like one eye's open, like, like just a 1X, like red dot kind of, but it's still, you've got eye relief to deal with. And that just was like, okay, or just a bear. Then I'm very comfortable. I've done standing drills with just dumping 5 rounds with that offset into a torso sized target. That's a charging bear or a monster, whatever. But it's just so much quicker than, because even just bringing that scope up. So I'm adding that on after that hunt. It's just another, I know
Well,
it would seem silly to people that don't ever go out and do this stuff, but it's like, look, I've been in scenarios, I've been in near self-defense shootings with humans. It just, once you've done things, it's like you're going to add tools that hopefully keep you safer and do the job better. And that's just why I did it. I'm not trying to be like, Tommy Tactical or whatever.
no, you
Um,
you you think of things ahead of, later after the fact, and it's like on that 458, basically, we're at night, and so I've added a light, and then
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got that quick acquisition on that Picatinny rail system, and so I have mine down, but I'm doing the filming. I'm in the back of the truck, and Wiley's on the ground, and so, but he's got a special technique he uses that he basically is shining up in the sky, and he brings it down just enough, and I've got the thermal, and I'm telling him direction, so wherever we're staring, that's the clock, that's 12 o'clock.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm the same direction wherever he's at, so I can give the dial, hey, you got something coming about 10 o'clock. It's about 200 meters away, it's coming in really fast, and then I'm to let him, I mean, coyotes, you see enough of them on thermal, you see enough of deer and hogs, and he's called them all of them in. So we basically are trying to get film of, because there's very, very few footage of this creature that they call the dog man that Wiley saw in 2013. And it was
That's just,
that's a whole nother,
that's horrible.
it
That's a
is.
horrible.
It's a whole nother level of creature, like, and that's why I say my brother Lane, he's just like, what the hell else is out there that we don't have a name for, or what else? And I think there's a lot of what else's, unfortunately. And after talking to that national park ranger, he enlightened me on, they don't have names, but he said they saw things that it was like land of the lost, and they had to file reports, but none of their reports ever made it to the public.
Yeah, we're sitting around the fire ring in front of our yard at my parents' house shortly after this. This was at Thanksgiving, so just, yeah,
Oh,
4 weeks after I ran into this thing, and I was, this was when I was telling the story, and I had kind of like the bravado and the fact that I went back and that I told the story to my siblings, the story without what I saw. it kind of added, plus we're sitting around having fun, we're all safe, and kind of gave it. I was like, okay, I can deal with this. Everyone thinks it's kind of a cool story. Yeah, this is kind of neat. My brother turned to my dad, who was career force service, like 48 years, and he said, Dad, you've been out in the woods more than any human being I've ever heard of. You ever seen or heard anything weird out there? And my dad's response is like, well, yeah, I mean, you go out there enough and that's it. I'm like, you signed an NDA, didn't you? I think I made that comment to him.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I do. I appreciate you even more. I mean, like I said, I don't know who else to talk about this. And I don't know. I have no social media presence. So I'm not like I'm an extreme introvert. And then I spend all day talking to patients and doctors and stuff. But so yeah, it feels kind of funny having to reach out to people that are kind of well known on podcasts. But I just really, as soon as I found your channel, and then I understood that you had kind of a gap I think in when you were on, because I found your channel just last year or maybe a little bit earlier, and there's this huge gap, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could talk to this guy. Of all the people I listen to, at least I'm like, I identify with what he's saying. Some of the other people, I'm like, I would like to talk to him since they talk to other people. Maybe they'll give me some insight. I'm not looking for answers, but so yeah, this has made me feel it's just good to be reassured just hearing other people talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard too. Like my wife, because I was seeing patients, and the crazy thing is, I was still in practice when I started the podcast, and some of my patients found out, and my wife was concerned that I might lose business. The crazy thing is, when they would come in, they wanted me to talk about what was on my podcast.
Mhm.
They were glued, and so it was kinda holding me up a little bit. I'm like, "Well, I can't if you wanna know, you can listen to the podcast," but I never really I don't go around talking about it, um, when I'm out and about. If people bring it up, I'll talk about it, but I'm more interested in people, but I don't bring it up because my family hears it, some of the time, but I don't really get a lot of time to listen to other podcasts. I don't have basically time because I'm doing interviews and I'm editing. It takes a long time to edit, and I'm writing about some of the things that not I don't want to say absolute what I know, but in listening to a lot of interviews and doing interviews, you get patterns. You see patterns, and that's what I'm writing about are these patterns that of the eyewitness, of what the creature does, what it doesn't do, and who, more importantly,
Mhm.
not to talk to if someone knocks at your door. Um, so that's really all. And by the time I get through with homesteads, chores, and I'm going through my firearms and cleaning them again and everything right now. So that's kind of I sit on the front porch. We live in a 100-year-old house, and I clean my firearms out there, and I've got my dogs in our garden. So I kind of live a simple life. It's kind of
Good.
boring.
Same
It's
here.
so I'll go out at night. My wife's in bed right now, I know, and so I'll usually have a kind of an evening cap, and I'll sit on my front porch. It's dark, and I know what's out there, but I'm kind of like you. I'm not going to have anything destroy what I love. I grew up hunting and trapping and fishing and hiking and tracking. My dad taught us all, and I just don't know. I'm not. You said it perfectly. I'm not a badass. I just enjoy the outdoors more, and I'm not going to let anything take that away.
Mhm.
And
Good.
but on the flip side of that, I do carry things that are a little larger and more powerful than I used to. So, but anyway, I'll stop rambling here. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it,
Okay,
bud.
thank you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll chat. I'd love to come up there sometime. So if I get my Jeep, I'm working on my Jeep. Oh yeah, I love working on my Jeep. That's what I do. I was doing it today. Uh, if you have a Jeep, you have to.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I work on it all the time. Half the time it's up on, Jax. My wife's like, what's going on now? But anyway, you have a good evening, and thank you for your time,
You as
buddy.
well.
And
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you sharing. It takes a lot of courage, and you don't forget, you'll just kind of cope a little bit better every week, every month, every year.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care, my friend. We'll
All
see you
right. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
All righty.
All right, guys, let's take a walk here and talk a little bit about what you heard and saw here. I thought this was one of those encounter stories that you just can't even imagine being by yourself. Now, when you've hunted as long as he has and been in the outdoors, it's just kind of second nature when you're used to the terrain, like I'm used to Oklahoma terrain, and this eyewitness is used to Idaho terrain, Oregon. I mean, he fought fires, has a lot of outdoor skills, and as you heard, he had a lot of firearms training skills, which I think, honestly, in this case, really was a profound survival tool for him. We brought it up a couple times and spoke about if had he not had a firearm, had he not had the training, what would have happened? I don't know. You hate to think of that possibility. But, it was very interesting. A couple things here, and I want you guys to comment, is do you think he was walking into an ambush? Or, which I didn't think about, he brought it up, do you think that he was being lured away from the others that maybe were hunting or doing something else, or away from the family unit that was close by? I didn't think about that. I was thinking more ambush, and it sure looked like it. But, what are your thoughts on that? Another factor, or feature I should say, is, here is someone with extensive training in the outdoors, and he was kind of mad at himself, as you heard. I can't believe I fell for it. I can't believe I fell for being lured in like that, And even the best of us gets lured into things we don't understand. He had never heard that sound before. And as he said, it was like a thok, like T-H-O-K, thok, like a heavy, meaty sounding wood-like or something. We assume it's wood, but I can just envision maybe that's what a heavy piece of timber or branch hitting against another timber would sound like, this thok sound. And, he'd not heard that before, so that's why he fell for it. I would have fell for the same thing, because your mind is like, I've never heard that before. I'm going to go figure it out or investigate it. And if it's a sound that you've heard before that you don't really care, then you won't investigate it, right? Typical indigenous wildlife. He was elk hunting, or he was wanting to get a muley. I think he was elk hunting primarily. So if you hear bugling or things like that, then you go, oh, hey, that's where I'm going. But it's still, he thought he knew where the sound was coming from, this thok sound, and that's where he went. And so, being that it was different, he's just like, his intrigue and curiosity is typically what I'm saying gets most of us in going in the direction of these creatures. They make sounds, they do something, we've not heard it before, we've not seen certain things before, so we head in that general direction. And he's an experienced hunter, as like many people that have these encounters are, actually. So let me know, comment on that a little bit. Also, had it not been for his training, as you heard, what he wanted to do with every ounce of his fiber is run. And when you're in a panic state of fear, and it's easy to talk about this, and it's one thing to experience it. I've experienced this twice in my life. And I would like to say on both occasions, I was level-headed. I was on the second time. My frontal lobe kicked in for some reasoning, but my first one, I just ran. Now this was years and years ago. I was a teenager. But it takes a lot of training and discipline, numerous times when you are in fear, to not run and to allow your frontal lobe, this reasoning part of our brain, to kick in to say, do not run. I have a firearm, I know how to use it, and how do I get myself out of this mess? So he thought he held his firearm properly, and he evaded properly or escaped properly by doing this lunges and turning, then backing, then lunging forward, then turning and backing, and he did this continuously. And that comes through training. And I'm going to tell you, not everybody does that. Not everybody does it, especially in these research field. I'm going to say the percentage of researchers and field investigators that actually do this is, I can probably put them on one hand. And I'm probably not too far off, to be honest. Not too many do that. So, very important point that he made during that part of the encounter story that you need to grasp there. Because when you're in high level fear, what kicks in is your training, things you've done over and over and over and over again, because you don't even know you're doing it. That's why you need to do it over and over and over and over and over again. And then once he got to about 200, 250 yards up that steep ascent, once he felt safe, what happens when you feel you're in a safe zone away from the threat, away from this creature or creatures? In this case, it was a Sasquatch, of course. Your adrenaline dump, and then time distortion happens. You get shaky, and you get disoriented. And that's what happened. Remember when he said just a crazy thing? He looked down when he got to the very top. He fell on that back ridge with his gun. It was so steep, pointing between his legs. And then when he realized it's not coming, he happened to see his boot, and he says, oh, my boot's untied. You know, and he kind of laughed because it seemed like a silly thing to say. But when you have this adrenaline dump and you start to subside post-encounter, your mind behaves a little strange. You think thoughts that you're like, why did I just say that? Why did I just think that? It doesn't make sense. Time gets distorted. He lost track of, what do I do now? Where do I go? What do I do? What do I do? And then he looked down in the snow and he saw his dad's footprints going back to camp. And that's when he said, oh, okay, let's go back to camp. Let's go back to camp. So that's what high extreme fear does. It's a part of the brain that's in the center called the amygdala. It takes over, it hijacks the reasoning part of the brain. And when you are in fear, you panic. And when you panic, you don't use good logic. And when you don't use good logic, this is when it can really cause problems for you to have injury, to fall off a cliff, to drop your firearm, to do things you normally wouldn't do that put your life more in danger. So that's why you need to rehearse, you need to practice, you need to prepare, you need to have contingencies, you need to do all this, especially if you want to enjoy the outdoors in remote areas, if you want to field investigate, if you want to be a researcher and go out. You want to have fun. Part of having fun is being knowledgeable about the environment you're in. Bottom line, bottom line. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It just means you need to plan, right? So what did you think about kind of what I call the post-encounter shock syndrome? Now, that's not a formal diagnosis. That's kind of what I call it, kind of informally, on describing what happens, this post-encounter shock syndrome, where after someone sees a creature, time distortion, time slows down, they forget the simplest of mundane tasks. They forget to have a firearm, they forget to have a phone, they kind of momentarily lose their position, where am I at? Or to look at a compass, if they have a compass. Things that they should know just kind of gets hijacked because the brain is trying to protect itself. The brain is trying to calm itself down, to not have a nervous breakdown, to put it bluntly. And to do that, it needs to slow other systems down in the brain, other autonomic features, and just focus on survival. Survival. That's all you're trying to do, is this survival. And then, of course, you really notice this once you get that person out of the perceived threat into a safe environment. Then they start to kind of like, where am I at? What's going on? What do I do now? That's when you see it, is post-encounter, typically. During the encounter, they're just trying to survive. Use your brain, get out of there. So anyway, what do you think about those features of that story? What do you think of how he described the Sasquatch being, the hair was really tight and gray, and how big this creature was? He said he drove a GMC truck, and when he got back to his truck, it was as wide at the shoulders as the hood on his truck. And that's also a feature that my brother Lane described when they had a close encounter. Him and his buddy Eddie had a close encounter outside of western Oklahoma. He said it was as wide as the truck, Lance. I know that sounds crazy, but it was as wide as the truck. And that's very much what this guest said regarding the just sheer imposing size. You can't even fathom and wrap your head around something living that wide. And he didn't see how thick it was, but based on how wide it was, he can only imagine. He didn't give approximates or anything on thickness. But I remember an interview that I did with a guest called JC, and he had an encounter in southeast Oklahoma, close to where my brother has some property. And JC saw his encounter, the Sasquatch walk as a profile, and he said it was 3 foot thick or thicker. 3 foot thick or thicker as it walked as a profile in front of his truck. That's big. That's so big we can't wrap our minds around that. So what did you think about that? I've never heard of a Sasquatch with this gray look, and he said that it had this definitive like beard. I've heard that before. And it was well marketed, where the beard started up high, and it was just kind of looking down at him through the trees. It's like it just blended in, to be in this guest position, not expecting to see that, being alone, hearing this sound, coming up on it, and at 25 yards away, and seeing this massive Sasquatch, that is such a fear dump on a person. That memory lasts forever. It's burnt in your brain. So as I said at the very end, I told him, I said, it's just a matter of coping. He is a healthcare professional, so he is very mindful about self-reflection, about his own psyche, about what was going on and why he was thinking what he's doing and what he was thinking. And I could tell during our conversation, he was even revisiting that himself And he's done that probably hundreds of times in his mind since that event, and which is a smart thing to do. That's what we do. We self-reflect, we self-analyze. What was it doing? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? What was I doing when I did that? So that's just a smart way to reevaluate the whole situation and maybe gain more insight, is going back to that moment. But I found this story to be highly fascinating, a very learning encounter interview, because there's features of it, a handful of features that I see repeated patterns of. There's some noise that draws a person in, the eyewitness, and then as they're drawn in, they have an encounter. When they have an encounter, they're stunned, they're shocked on what they see, they evade, they have a post-encounter shock syndrome effect, this dump of adrenaline once they get to a perceived place of safety. They have distortion of time, not knowing what to do, the next decision, just the simplest of tasks. They lose that premise of that decision making. Everything is kind of tunnel vision. Everything is kind of limited down to just, what do I do next? What do I do next? And then we have, as you heard, this breakdown, this emotional breakdown, where he just lost it, and he got in the truck and he just lost it. And this is very common feature and psychological pattern that we see, because these creatures are not something we're told about that exist. These creatures are not supposed to exist, yet they do. They do. And no one really talks about this in daily news, in daily newspapers or magazines. We hear about these stories, these true stories, only through people telling us that we deem credible, at credible careers. They have nothing to lose, nothing to really gain at all, but they desire to get it off their chest and to let others like you and I know what is really out there. And that's what I appreciate about these people, these eyewitnesses, is they're allowing us to be a part of their lives, to have the courage to come forward. Many have been ridiculed, some have been teased, and yet they still come forward for our safety, for our knowledge, for the benefit of us, that some of us have not had encounters and many of us have. And out of the majority of the people that's had encounters, I don't know too many people that said, I'm glad I had an encounter. I just don't know a lot of those eyewitnesses that said that they were glad they had an encounter. Many of them say, I wish I'd have never had it, and I wish many people, they don't have one. So anyway, I'll end on that, guys. I just wanted to touch on a couple things that kind of stuck out to me. I want to know what you think. And as always, guys, be safe out there. Have a plan. Enjoy the outdoors. Be knowledgeable. And like I said in the very beginning of this intro, if you're a researcher or field investigator, God bless you. Enjoy the outdoors. Really, truly enjoy the outdoors. But aside from being physically prepared, which I did talk about that too, you know, you got to get your body ready aerobically, right? To do what you need it to do when you need it to do it. You got to have your gear and everything in place. That's part of it. Let people know where you're going. That's part of it. Compass, all that stuff, gear. But no one really talks about the mental preparation. I want you to mentally be prepared, and you need to prepare. What and how am I going to respond emotionally to a sighting. At 10 feet, at 10 yards, at 25 yards, as in this case, at 100 yards, if it's standing, if it's sitting, if it's running at me. And I know this sounds silly, but if you do this, I promise you, you will begin to start going through scenarios and you'll be able to handle the stress if it ever happens in the field. And I promise you, you'll thank me down the road. In the meantime, guys, keep safe, keep enjoying the outdoors, tell people where you're going, but always remember, we're never alone when in the wilderness, guys. Take care. God bless. See you soon.